Hey guys, we're the Call Guys. I'm David.
And I'm George.
We are joined this week by our friend Nick Kremydas. Nick is the president of the South Carolina Realtors Association. Really, Nick has been the face so long for the Realtors Association here in our great state. He does a great job of leading this group of professional real estate persons from across the state. He's an incredible advocate for home ownership. So, Nick, thank you for joining us this afternoon. We're glad to have you with us to talk about what it means to be a realtor today.
This episode is brought to you by Dick Dyer Mercedes-Benz, the first Mercedes-Benz in South Carolina.
So that's just one of the issues that the Realtors Association is starting to talk about and is going to be talking about moving forward over the next few years. But what is the biggest issue, would you say, right now in the state of South Carolina legally? It could be the short-term rentals that will happen over time, or is there a bigger issue? And then what will be an issue in the next few years, do you think?
Yeah, I think the big issue right now, George, that's a great question. The big issue right now that I see that could impact sales and home ownership numbers in the short term and long term is what's happening with homeowners insurance. In our coastal areas, now I don't want folks in the Midlands or the upstate to get comfortable because this is starting to spread up past 95. But this year alone, we've seen across the board 25%, 30% increases in homeowner insurance premiums. And if you live in a condo regime or, a multifamily condo or apartment ownership complex, those rates have skyrocketed much higher. And this is a result of the horrible tragedy down in Florida, the Surfside building that collapsed, and the storms that have created a lot of liability for the insurance companies, which have resulted in insurance companies pulling out of the market. Y'all have read about insurance companies not offering homeowners insurance anymore. That is bad for the marketplace. Everyone's premiums will go up as a result. And so that's kind of a short-term issue that I'm concerned about for our markets. A little bit longer-term issue, and this is a little more nuanced, but many of your listeners will know that property taxes in South Carolina are a little different than our neighboring states. 6% properties, which are commercial, retail, second homes, are all taxed at about a rate. It's about 3 times higher than what owner occupied or 4% tax rate would be because of the way those are defined and the way those are implemented. We made some progress last year with reducing the manufacturing industrial rate to be more competitive. I don't know if you saw the Lincoln Institute's numbers just recently before the lowering of the manufacturing rate. Dillon, South Carolina. Y'all know where Dillon is? It's just kind of north of Florence on 95. But
Yes, sir.
Manufacturing property in Dillon, its taxes were higher than similar property in New Jersey. And that's just unimaginable to think that. While we have the lowest I think we're second or third lowest tax rate for owner-occupied property. We're the second or third highest for commercial and manufacturing. And so we've got to bring some balance back to that so that we can grow more mom and pop businesses. Because in our world, we like to say jobs equal homes. And the more jobs we create, the more homes that we will sell and need in South Carolina. The other, George, just to kind of wrap up on your question, inventory is still very, very low at historic lows. Market has cooled off a little bit because of interest rates, the Fed backing off of their aggressive policy on national inflation numbers. We've already seen that mortgage rate cool off a little. I think it's going to cool off a lot more as long as the Fed doesn't jump back in. But if buyers get interested, we're still going to run into this problem of low inventory. And if you're a first-time home buyer that can't take advantage of any of the equity that's been built into South Carolina, I don't know if y'all have seen the numbers, David, but in the last 3 years, home prices in South Carolina have increased by almost 50%.
Yes, sir.
So I'm sorry, I should say home values have increased by almost 50% in the last 3 years since COVID. And that makes it for a very challenging environment for first-time homeowners. And, you know, in a state where we're seeing more minority home ownership among our African-American community and Hispanic communities, which will likely outpace all other markets in the next 15, 20 years, we definitely need more inventory on the ground.
So we know you guys as an organization are heavily involved and invested in professional development and leadership development of realtors across the state of South Carolina. Talk to us a little bit about what those programs look for and kind of, you know, what's the goal of that?
Absolutely. We've got a couple of new programs this year, David, that we've launched around our legal hotline. One of the benefits of being a Realtor member is access to our 4-person legal team that we have here at SCR. And that legal team is here to help advise our members on issues that pop up with maybe it's an item in the listing agreement, or there's a problem with the HUD, or there's at the closing statement. There's a dispute between companies over agency issues. Our legal hotline, one of our most popular services, provides our members. In most cases, we pride ourselves. We try to, you know, I can't say we instantly respond, but we do a really good job of trying to respond as quickly as humanly possible. And it gives our members an advantage in the marketplace when they have a ready legal team that can help advise them, which in turn helps in their relationship with their clients. So we've converted that into a legal podcast, similar to your podcast, where we provide our members with timely information, things that they need to be successful and avoid risk in their business. And you know, if you're a real estate licensee and all you do is take the minimum 8 hours of continuing, or 10 hours of continuing education every 2 years, that's 5 hours a year that are the minimum requirements. There's no way to stay on top of what's happening in the marketplace, either from a legal standpoint, regulatory standpoint, changes in real estate contracts, issues dealing with inspections and closings. Y'all obviously, I'm preaching to the choir here with you guys, but there's so much that happens in our industry, and realtors have the tools at their disposal to make sure they stay on top of those things.
While you were talking there, you had mentioned the contract of sale. So what does the Realtor Association have to do with changes being made on that contract?
So the the CCRA, the Central Carolina Realtors Association, promulgates a real estate contract that is tailor-made to the Columbia, metro region and the areas that you serve. You've got local attorneys that have drafted that contract. You've got local attorneys that advise the realtors on changes that need to be made. If there's say there's a Supreme Court case or there's new legislation that passed that requires an update to that form, realtors are always going to have the most up-to-date, most current version of the sales contract. And there may be some out there that rely on, I don't know what those websites are that where you can download, contracts and whatnot. I would use a contract that I know is drafted by a South Carolina attorney and that's timely and up to date.
Yeah. So y'all also have a leadership academy where you bring folks from all over the state together for coursework across the year. Kind of what was the genesis of that, and how has that benefited the operation of the Realtor Association and just real estate in general over the past couple of years?
It's a pretty amazing program, and y'all are probably familiar with program. I know the Chamber of Commerce has a leadership program. There are a number of other fellows and I think other programs that do similar training. And, I've been blessed to work with great realtor leaders during my career. And the one trait that they all share is they realize they're not going to be around forever, and they need to have other realtors who step up to take up this role of defending property rights and promoting home ownership. And so many years ago, a leadership program was created, and it isn't solely focused on real estate. It's the primary focus, of course, but it is a program that teaches about that improves your leadership skills, gives you that behind the curtain peek at what happens during the legislative process in Columbia, or what happens with our National Association staff. The class this year spent a day and a half in Washington, D.C. with our federal lobbyists to see how the sausage is made in D.C. Now, the program is only open for Realtor members only, but it is I think if we did a head count of our current either executive committee or board of directors, you'd be pleasantly surprised to see how many hands go up when you ask, have you graduated from SCR's Leadership Academy? It's a great program.
Awesome. If there's somebody who's watching this podcast and they're a real estate agent, but they're not a realtor yet, and they're thinking from an outside perspective, how is what I have to say, in my opinion, going to be reflected in the realtors' push for legislation? What would be your response for their ask of how are they able to get involved into actually making stuff happen as a member?
That's a great question. There are a lot of real estate licensees in South Carolina that are not realtor members, and for many, they see the association as not part of their business plan. They know that we lobby and that they will benefit from those lobbying efforts, whether they belong or not, right? And what I would encourage them to do, your realtor association locally and at the state has worked tremendously over the last few years to be a more inclusive, a more welcoming organization. Your local association would welcome participation. Most associations have what's called a legislative committee, where you can have your voice heard. Oftentimes, when you hear us talking about politics, you'll hear us talking about the Realtor Party, and that's on purpose because we're not a Republican or Democrat organization. When you mix red and blue together, you get purple, right? And purple is kind of our if there's a color code that we have, it's purple because we work on legislative issues that are irrespective of party issues. If they're important to home ownership, property rights, or investing in real estate, it doesn't matter what political party you're in. We support and get involved on those issues. I would say, overwhelming majority of the issues we engage in are not partisan at all. And often we have very broad bipartisan support on the issues that we work on. And our members are very diverse, and we certainly value all of our members' input. And if you have a interest, whether it's real estate education, whether it's politics, whether it's legislative or legal risk, then there's a committee for you to serve on. And we just reach out to me. David, feel free to throw my contact information at the end of the podcast, and I'm happy to respond or help anyone with any information they might want.
Yeah, we'll ask that, but I'm going to ask one question to kind of wrap this up here. Just, all this great information that you've been sharing, but You have led this organization for over 30 years, and I don't know any realtor or even real estate agent who in this state that does not know your name. What has kept you in your role in the field of real estate? What has driven that interest in this long-term leadership that you have provided and just continue to give?
Well, it's not a job; it's a real passion, and many of I'm sure some of our realtors that are listening will have heard this story before. But my mom and dad were Greek immigrants who came to the United States seeking the American dream, and they bought a little house in Florence, South Carolina, where I grew up, and that my dad ran a restaurant in Florence, like a lot of Greek immigrants did, and I kind of learned the nuts and bolts of what good customer service means in the restaurant business. You don't get repeat business if you don't provide good service in a restaurant. And I really taken that to heart. The work that we do is a legacy to my mom and dad who still live in Florence, and I'm proud of my roots. I'm proud of my heritage, and I've held several different roles here at the association. I was a chief lobbyist, I was general counsel, and have had the honor and privilege of serving as the chief executive officer. But at the end of the day, David, I work with great people who have a single-minded mission, and that's making sure that South Carolinians have options for home ownership, have options if they need to rent a home. Having during I guess during COVID, that message was never clear, right? You can't. They were telling us to shelter at home. Well, you can't shelter at home if you don't have shelter, right? And this mission that we're on is never ending. Every single day that I come to work, there's a new legal issue. There's a new legislative issue. There's a new regulatory issue. There's a legal challenge that comes up, and so there's not a stale day on my calendar. And I love the people I work with. I love the mission that we have, and it's been that y'all are making me sound like an old guy. I'm not. I'm only 56, so I still have. I've got the best ahead of me, and we've got some great initiatives that we've got on the horizon with some additional. We got to tackle tax reform. We got to tackle a few other big key issues here in South Carolina. So there's a lot to do, and we're going to continue working hard on behalf of our realtor members and our property owners in South Carolina.
Well, to wrap it up, Nick, could you please share your contact information or the contact information for the Realtors Association? That way, if anybody has any questions, they can reach out to us, they can reach out to y'all, and we can't thank you enough for being on.
Yeah, just my email address is nick, N-I-C-K, @screaltors with an S.org, nick@screaltors.org.
Awesome, Nick. Well, thank you so much for giving us part of your afternoon to sit down and talk about this. We appreciate your dedication to our organization and our industry. We just can't say that enough. But again, we're the Cola Guys. I'm David.
And I'm George.
And thank y'all for tuning in today.
This episode of The Cola Guys is sponsored by Bell Carrington, Price & Gregg. Bell Carrington is our choice for the best real estate attorneys in town. They are highly communicative and make sure that the closing process is as smooth as possible. With offices in North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama, they can handle any of your real estate finance, eminent domain, financial services litigation, and litigation needs. Call their Columbia SC office today at 803-509-5078.